Hello friends, welcome to my channel. In this video I am going to discuss about sources of information. Okay, so this is a part of the BLI-222 of IGNOU syllabus. So in this video I'm going to discuss about the sources of information and its various types. So let's start. So what is the sources of information? Let's know about what is source before. So source is anything that originates, or in other words starts from. So anything that originates or starts from. So in sources of information, the information that starts from, and we provide it to the someone. So information sources, we providing the information to the someone. So that is about sources of information. So in sources of information we have two categories. One is documentary sources, and second one is non-documentary sources of information. So we get information from these two. So how? Let's know. So these are the two types in sources of information. So first let's know about what is documentary sources of information. So in documentary sources of information, so documentary sources of information, so as it says, the documentary, it is in either printed or recorded in any form, recorded in any format or form, so that others can use it, right? So that is the documentary sources of information. Usually in documentary sources we have seen textbooks, research reports, theses. These are called various document textbooks. So textbooks, research reports. So what we indicates that these are all printed formats, and magazines, newspapers. So these are all examples for the documentary sources which are in printed form or in any recorded form. So this is about documentary sources. So in documentary sources we have again three categories. So in documentary sources, one is primary sources of information, second is secondary sources of information, third one is tertiary sources of information. So let's discuss one by one. So these come under documentary sources of information. So let's know about what is primary sources of information. So primary sources of information contains the primary thought of an author, means it is the original sources of information. So it is the original work of an author, original work of author. So original thought of author. So original thought of author or someone. So usually the documents in primary sources of information are original things. They are not copied from any other sources. So usually the report research, for example, let's take an example, research report. in this you done a research activity, so you provide at the end research report, so that is your original content. So nobody has copied it before because your research is totally new thing. So that is one of the example. Another in is thesis. Same thing, when you do the research you will submit your thesis at the end, so that is your shows it indicates your original work. So same thing happens in the patents. When you invented something new, so you will, when you invent something new, so you will do the patent on it. Means you in order to avoid the misuse of someone, or in order to avoid the reselling or recopying of your invented thing or your work, so you do the patent. So patent indicates your original work, so that nobody have rights to copy it, or nobody have rights to reproduce it. So that is about the patent reports, patent documents, sorry. So this is about the primary sources of information. So let's know about what is the secondary sources of information. Secondary sources of information. So in the secondary sources of information, the information which is present here are from primary sources or copied from primary sources. So primary sources leads to the secondary sources of information, right? So that's how, for example, we have review progress or indexing services, textbooks. For example, let's take textbook. All the textbook are not original, or some textbooks are original written by the one authors, or some textbooks are copied from the original work of a author. So that is indicates that secondary sources of information. And we have review progress reports. So in review progress report, the document information which is present in the review progress report is that it is copied from the primary article, primary thing or something. So whereas same thing in abstracting. So what you do in abstracting service, so in abstracting service you copy the information from primary sources. So you make a summary of a document, so that indicates summary of a document, that indicates that uh, this is the secondary sources of information. So usually what it indicates, secondary sources of information, those are copied from the primary sources. So these are the example for the secondary sources of information. Let's know about the third one, tertiary. Third one in documentary sources, so that is tertiary sources of information. So here the information generated or copied from primary and secondary sources, and secondary sources. So information, these are copied or reproduced from the primary and secondary sources. For example, we have bibliographies. So in bibliographies, all the documents information about title, author name, what else is present, publisher name, publication name, etc. So all these informations are present in bibliographies are copied from the original document or secondary sources, like that. So this is the example for tertiary sources of information. So another example is the digest and guides. So the information is present in a short form summaries, which are the information present here from copied from the original documents, either from a primary sources or secondary sources. So these digest and guides are not original work, so they are copied from the primary and secondary sources. So these are the example for tertiary sources of information. So one thing is to, whenever a user wants a book, he first goes to the tertiary sources of information. He finds he finds title, author, or publisher name. So if he if he knows that the document that belongs to him is if he knows any author name or title, then only after knowing the suitable author and title, then he reaches to the secondary sources. So secondary sources. So in secondary sources, summaries of a document is present, so he will read the summary, and if he feels that the document that he is looking for is that one, so then he reaches to the primary document. So usually you start from the tertiary, where the title, author name or publisher name present. If he feels the document that he deserves is present there or in a library or something, then he go to the secondary sources. Then there he reads the summary about the document. Then he confirms that is the document he is looking for. Then after confirmation, he will go to the, so finally he will reach us to the primary document. So this is how it works. So this is all about the documentary sources of information. So in secondary, next in second type, in sources of information, second category, that is non-documentary sources of information. Non-documentary sources of information. So in non-documentary sources of information, the information is not in any printed or recorded format. So the information is usually in this non-documentary type of information is between person to person. Sometimes the communication is between government to government, or sometimes the information is communication between the government to government department to provide. Usually the information you get it by talking with a person, by interview, by attending meeting. So that's how you get these informations, by attending meetings, conferences. So this is how you get the information in non-documentary type of information. So in non-documentary, again we have, so in non-documentary sources, we have two categories. One is formal sources of information, and second one is informal sources of information. So let's know about what is formal and informal sources of information. So in formal sources of information, usually you get information from government department. You get by visiting a library. You sometimes you get it from private organizations, like that. You get usually from a departments, organizations, or library, like that. Or you get information from universities. Sometimes you get information from colleges, sometimes you get information from the research and development, this R&D department, research and development department. Okay, this is how you get information in non-documentary sources of information, that is in formal sources. So in informal sources of non-documentary sources information, in informal way, so you get information by speaking with a person, by interview, by observation. So by observation, interview, speaking with a person, and sometimes you get by attending meetings, conferences, various conferences, attending conferences usually for research scholars. So like this, in informal way you get it, informal sources of information, you get information like this. So thank you for watching. Please, if you have any doubts, please comment below. So subscribe to my channel. Don't forget, for more update about important topics or questions for exam preparations. So please subscribe to my channel. So thank you. Thank you.